Ole Miss is inching closer to that elusive college football playoff push with another night game coming up in a couple of weeks against the Florida Gators. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Let's talk to the legend, John Fourcade, and see what he thought about that game.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am a 10-year veteran member of the national media. My name is Stephen Willis, and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Ole Miss versus South Carolina game. John Fourcade was there. We're going to get his thoughts. We're going to talk about Ole Miss in Florida because the next 2 weeks, that is the dominant storyline. And we'll talk about potentially some other SEC games and lines in those games as well. So it should be interesting. Remember, we're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. One thing that's interesting, John, I know you were at the game. It was really nice to see Ole Miss win a game where Trinidad Chambliss just wasn't the star of that ball game. The defense had to win, and that's an unbelievable positive for this football team.
Well, there's no doubt when you can win games. And I was talking to someone today in regards to just about some of the teams that barely win by 2, 3, 4 points. I said, well, won't you take a win over a loss any day of the week? I said, I don't care if you win 5 straight games by 3 points, 2 points, or 1 point. You're 5-0 versus, 1-4. So that game that I saw the other night was definitely a game where everybody had a step up. Special teams did well with the fake kick, the fake punt. They did well defensively. I mean, they had a flock of sacks. They had pressure all over Sellers. I'm a good Sellers fan for us. I like him as a running guy. He doesn't throw the ball very well, and that's the thing Ole Miss said was, let him beat us throwing the football. We'll keep him from running. But, yeah, Trinidad didn't play his best game. It was a good game, but it wasn't a great game. And overall, I think that this was a team win because everybody had to step up. And that's the thing. I was in the stands looking at my buddy and said, man, are they going to play Simmons and give him some reps early? Because Trinidad's not really was on target, wasn't running, wasn't doing a few things. But a win's a win. And that's the thing. Right now, to get the playoffs, Stephen, you got to win. And I don't care if you play next week, if you play Citadel and you beat them by 10, who cares? You win the football game. Sure, they should beat them by 50, but it doesn't matter. Florida game comes in, and like you said, we'll talk about that. But they won the game the other night. It was in true fashion of everybody stepping up and playing well.
Yeah, and the amazing part is everybody's kind of teeth gnashing about the offensive performance. They scored 30 points, and it wasn't necessarily gift 30 points. They actually scored 30 points and didn't play well. There's a lot whenever you look at this game that you probably felt like all of the clunkiness during the game, but when you sit back and look back, there's a lot to take away from it in a positive light.
Well, in a couple of things here, I guess everybody says, well, you scored 30 points. Yeah, you should win it. There's a goal that we always set is how many points you want to average a game offensively that you should win. And we should always say 27, 28 points. And then the defense come back and say, well, if we give up 21, 17, 21, we should win. They scored 30, but this is college football. 30 is nothing nowadays in college football. That's something like you might have that as the first half. But not playing well and scoring 30 points is better than playing great and losing. So they won the football game. And, there's so much. And I'm going to put this flat out there, but I wish, people would understand something. It's a football game you're going to. All the crap I see prior to the game, I was on the field. Yeah, I got to go down there. I'm thinking to myself, why am I out here? Why am I on the field? It's just these wannabes out here who just people go around. It's great and everything, but it takes away. It's ridiculous. All the hooplas and all this and that, and 3.5-minute timeouts and all this other stuff. Let's play football. I'm here to watch football, and that affects players. When you're out there and there's so much stuff going on, It's just it takes away from guys' rhythms and getting in. You get lulled into this and that. But Lane Kiffin is such a good coach that he's sort of like that with the players, but he knows where his limits are at. He got a penalty for running on the field, celebrating, and that's great and everything. But if he wasn't up, and it's at the end of the game, and he had the interception, and they weren't going to lose that football game. But you got to do the smart things as a team, and got to give South Carolina. Steven, it's the SEC. You know as well as I do, you can beat and lose to anybody in the SEC. And so right now, who would have thought Kentucky went into Auburn and beat them? But then again, that's two teams for two stories later. But right now, Ole Miss wins the game. They come out healthy, I believe. They move on to Citadel. It's almost like a bye week. Get ready, just win the football game. And then you got to get ready for that Florida Gators coming in.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Florida game in the second segment because that has a chance to be an unbelievable atmosphere that night. And if you look at the South Carolina game, the fans kind of showed out. I mean, it came across the TV that place was kind of rocking.
Oh, there's no doubt. I've got a little frustrated with the music. I couldn't hear. I came home with a hoarse voice because the guy sitting next to a good friend of mine, Tim Bell, and a former, trainer for hours, and we tried to talk. And I should have learned sign language before I got there because the music's way too loud. The atmosphere is fantastic. But look, it is what it is these days. That place was rocking. But in all fairness, I'm going to say this. In the second half, a lot of people left when that temperature dropped. It got so cold in there. The wind was blowing. There was a lot of people that left the stadium, but it still had a good. If it was 74,000 when it started, it was probably 65 when it ended because it definitely lost its muster only because of the weather. It got really cold, and they thought about rain. There was no rain, thank God. But man, the atmosphere, the Grove. You couldn't walk in the Grove. It's just so packed downtown. I mean, just imagine what happens in 2 weeks when Florida comes in.
Yeah, that game has a chance to be so weird in the atmosphere. The weird thing is, and it has nothing to necessarily do with the opponent. I think it has to do with what Ole Miss can possibly do. That's what's building the excitement. Because if you beat the Citadel and then you beat Florida, that Mississippi State game kind of becomes a coronation. Now, we all know that game can get weird, but if you would rather be 10-1 going into that game than 9-2.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And I told myself this, and I think everybody agrees with me. If Ole Miss still ends up 10-2 for the year, say they drop Florida game or state game, whichever, they're still in at 10-2. I would presumably bet you they'll be in the top 12 at the end of the year, even if they drop one of them games. Preferably if they drop one, it'd be a better Florida game than if you lose to State, because I don't think State's all that good, but got to give them credit. They hung in there. But the atmosphere right now is they think, and everybody I spoke to, that Ole Miss can definitely end the season 11-1, which definitely gets them in. And then you're fighting for the position, Stephen. The top 8, you'll host a game. And if they're in 5, 6, 7, or 8, they're going to host. But they're in 1 through 4, they get a bye. And then they'll be the host team, but it's not going to be at home. You're going to either go to the Sugar Bowl or the Peach Bowl or wherever they send them. They try to send each top 4 team somewhere close enough to them to a bowl game where you can get there, which I think is ridiculous. I think if you're a host team in the top 4, your butt should play a home game. The heck with the bowl game. That has got nothing to do with it because look at poor Oregon. Number 1 ranked team seeded in the playoffs last year. Had to go play in the Rose Bowl, believe it or not, and Ohio State beat their butts. So right now, Ole Miss doesn't care. I know Lane Kiffin said, I'll play you any place, anywhere, anytime. He don't care.
Yeah, his thing is spot the ball. That's what he likes.
Well, anyway. Grass field's a grass field no matter where you go, or turf field's turf field. The only difference is you're not at home.
Yeah, and they're not going to play the game in Canada, so it's not going to be 130 yards long or something like that.
Right, true. And it won't be an extra 5 yards wide, and you get 4 down instead of 3.
Yeah, so it should all work out. Anyway, when we come back, we will talk to the legend, John Fourcade, about the Florida Gators and start kind of moving into that game, thinking about what's going on. We're not overlooking the Citadel, but come on. Anyway, we'll talk about that as soon as we come back. College football is back, and I could not be much more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually, getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Do us a favor also and like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it helps keep all of this free. Also, Locked On is getting ready to change the game again, all in the name of having fun following your team. It's coming in December. On our subtext today, we put some quotes from the game. We have some contributors contributing recruiting information on there. That's only going to be on the subtext channel. The link's down below. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. All right, John, this Florida game coming up has a chance to be oh so weird. And the fact that Ole Miss needs this game for the college football playoff, that's enough to make this the biggest football game in Ole Miss history by itself. Because if Ole Miss makes the playoff, the biggest game in Mississippi history is going to get played potentially. But you add on top of that, Florida thinks they're going to take Lane Kiffin, and all of that's going as well. And the Ole Miss fans are doing what they did against when Auburn did this in 2022, and they're rallying around. They're circling the wagon. So when you put all of that together, this Florida game has a chance to be absolutely massive.
Well, the big factor is they're playing it in Oxford and not in Gainesville. That's one factor. The second factor is Lane Kiffin, no matter what his plans are when the season's over with, he's going to want to beat Florida because that helps his ball club get into the playoffs. And that's the whole object behind what Ole Miss is trying to do right now, is get into the playoffs. This Florida football team has potential to definitely win this game. The biggest drawback they have is they got a guy named Lagway playing quarterback who I do not think is very good. He's an athlete playing quarterback. His throwing ability is sort of like Sellers. Can run, but doesn't throw the ball well. I would bet you anything that Golden is going to have a package deal for this young man like they did with Sellers. Florida is down. They had the Georgia Bulldogs beaten. They blew that game. They were talking about how good the Florida defense is. It is a very good defense. Ole Miss cannot go in this ball game thinking, we're playing a team that's not winning football games, and they won't be ready. They will be ready because anytime an SEC team can beat another SEC team and knock them out, in this case, of the playoffs or close to being knocked out of the playoffs, they all want to be ready to play them. So this is going to be a battle, and I'm just grateful and glad it's in Oxford.
Yes, and a night game in Oxford. After a year ago having no night games, it's going to be completely unreal. Now, you played in Oxford when they didn't have lights at Vaught-Hemingway at that point, right?
That is correct.
So any home night games that you got to play was in Jackson, correct?
Go up to Memphis, but yeah, Jackson was where we went and played the big games at night.
So what was the best atmosphere that you had when you played quarterback at Ole Miss?
Being in Oxford, not many, because you're only playing in front of 40-something thousand people, and we wasn't, I'd say, great, but we had some games there that were all sold out. It's easy to sell out 41,000. But when we went down to Jackson and played our big games, Alabama's, the LSU's, we played Texas A&M, we played Arkansas there, we played Missouri there. Obviously, we played Mississippi State in Jackson. So those was all of the big games, I would say, for attendance wise. And plus playing in Jackson at the time, we were playing at 64,000, whereas in Oxford you played 41,000. So it's a night and day situation with the fans. And look, I didn't care where we played, who we played, and how many fans we played. I went to play football. That was my job as a college player. Show up, play 60 minutes, give it all I had, no matter who we played against. And, 41,000 to me back when I played was better than, my little 10 to 12,000 we played at high school. And then, then we bumped out high school games sometimes in the Dome and the Tulane Stadium. You're looking at 30,000. So when I went to Oxford, it didn't matter. 41 is 41. And then we went and played in Jackson and got 64,000. So anytime a college kid can go play football, you tend not to worry about the crowd. But we were totally different now. We didn't have the boom box. We didn't have the music. We didn't have the people on the sidelines before. We didn't have all the hoopla and stuff all through the games. We didn't have running over and dunking basketballs in nets and stuff and all, and the goals. That's all fine and dandy nowadays. We didn't have all that before. We played with, certain set of uniforms and we go out and play, but now it's all glorified. People calling me up during the game. I want one of them helmets. I need to have. Can you get me one? Sure, I'm just going to steal them out of the locker room so you can have the helmets. But times have changed. College football is so fantastic. Someone asked me on a show the other day, what would you rather play? I said, best football. College football. I mean, I played in the pros, been there, but it's more of a business than it is college. You're having fun in college. Yeah, you're out there to win, but the atmosphere now in Oxford is unbelievable. And I love it. Hell, that's part of the game.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talk about the Realtree helmet and all of that. How did the uniforms look in person?
If at first I thought they were white helmets, kind of, I've seen them before with the white helmet, a little decorated. But the first thing I noticed, Stephen, when I walked onto the field prior to the game, they had the gray pants with the red and blue stripes on. I'm like, thank you, Lord. About time they went back to the traditional pants. But everything else, it kind of fit in. It was hard to adjust to because I wasn't used to it, but I loved it. It was beautiful. I enjoyed it, and I think they need to do a little more of that maybe and a few other things. I kind of got accustomed to it after watching it because for a while, some of the other games they played, I wasn't into certain things. I'm not the big powder blue jersey type guy, but hey, man, if you win in football games and the players want it, what the heck, go ahead and go with it. And I'm enjoying what I'm seeing of the non-traditional uniforms they bring, but don't do it all the time. I mean, keep tradition with the red, white, and blue, and but get back to wearing some of the gray pants with the side stripes. But look, you don't wear the uniforms. That don't determine if you win or lose a ball game. You got to still go out and play. But it looked good. It looked good. I enjoyed it. It looked, nice. I got to try to find a way I can sneak in and steal some helmets. Don't tell nobody, though.
Yes, seriously.
See if I can get a key.
One thing that's interesting, this is a thought that I had about uniforms. If you want to do all the alternate uniforms, that's great. But the first game of the season, the Mississippi State game and the LSU game should always be traditional uniforms.
Oh, there's no doubt. When you play the big games, that means something. When you start the season as one, and I agree. Mississippi State game is definitely traditional, and then the LSU game. The rest of the games, you want to do some stuff, that's great and everything. But you got to give us a chance at home to do the new sets of uniform like that. Don't wear them just to go on the road because the home fans want to see it as well up close and personally. So do it every now and then. I totally agree with what you're saying. You got all them games to play. Stay with traditional. If you got 12 games, at least go 7, 8 games. I think traditional colors. You can revise it up, but a couple 3 or 4 games. Throw in some little wrinkle stuff and. As long as they don't come out there with like green uniforms or black, don't go nothing dark. You are not dark. We don't wear black at Oxford. That has nothing to do with us. Do not do. Like when I watch Tennessee and a few other, I'm like, what are they wearing? I mean, I saw the Green Bay Packers playing. Like, what is that? The other night, I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And then you see some of these traditional old time stuff. I don't know what they're thinking about, but the new stuff right now is great to wear, but do it at home.
Yeah, you cannot wear black unless black is one of your colors. You can't co-opt it. And I'm thankful that Ole Miss has worn all navy a couple of times, but that's as far as they're willing to go. I
Well,
am
my
thankful.
take is this. I've never been a guy where you wear the same color socks as the same color pants as the same color shirts, in dark. No, not all red. I'm not into that. I'm not all into all blue. Now, if you want to, all white, that's a different scenario. It stands out better than all one solid color. I could never understand that. Mix and match the pants with the jerseys. I'm okay with that, but not all one color. I just don't like only if you're doing white. White kind of stands out when you do it with the red numerals or the blue numerals and stuff like that. But look, man, win football game. I don't care if you go out there wearing a tutu. I don't care what you're wearing, as long as you win in football games. And, just don't worry about – you just ain't Oregon. Oregon has to have their 2,000 different flavors and this and that and everything. That's them. They worry more about their uniforms there. That's why you'll never see them win a national championship. Whereas you got other schools that traditional, the Penn States, the Alabamas, even the Georgias, you might throw a ring, but I've never seen Alabama change one iota of a uniform.
They had one game where the collar of their crimson jerseys was houndstooth, and it caused such an uproar that they've never done it again.
Wow. You know why that was for? That was for Bear Bryant. I can't see why y'all wouldn't honor him wearing that. But you know what? It just goes to show you that Alabama's with tradition will stick around, and we don't, Penn State does that. A few other teams will do that. And every now and then I think it's coming to time where, you gotta get away from the past and go for the now. Because kids, you want to recruit somebody. I promise you, they're asking, what about your uniform? When I grew up, I didn't care what the hell they wore. I'm going to Ole Miss. I'm going to play football. I go to LSU, whatever. But you look at what other schools have done, and these kids getting recruited, they want to know how many different flavors of pants and flavors of uniforms and shoes and stuff. Because they at the end, when it's all over, they get to keep all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, we will continue talking with the legend John Fourcade about the SEC football games coming up this weekend, so stick around for that. But first, I want to tell you the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel. It is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to the next fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It helps keep every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bet when that first $5 bet wins. So head on over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Really interesting stuff. This is a relatively light week, John. This is a relatively light week in the SEC schedule. The biggest game of the week is probably Texas A&M and Missouri, maybe. It's a weird schedule because Auburn is an interim coach. LSU is an interim coach. Florida is an interim coach. You have Georgia and Mississippi State and Texas A&M versus Missouri. I guess those are the two primo games.
Well, if you look at it, A&M and Missouri don't have their quarterback. He got hurt against Vandy, so I'm not sure he's going to play. Alabama's interim coach or not, they still have talent on that club, but I don't see him going into Alabama and beating Bama. Georgia, Mississippi State, that line's 7.5. That's a joke. Georgia should run them out of the ballpark. You got Auburn at Vandy. That's another one, 6.5. I think Vanderbilt takes care of that one. And you go Florida, Kentucky. It's two teams that will probably have new coaches at the beginning of next season. So there's not a lot. There's not a lot on a table this week, but you still got to go out and play. And if you don't come out and play, somebody can slip up and beat you. The only good games I would really watch would be the A&M, Missouri, and the LSU and Alabama.
Yeah, and of course, Ole Miss versus the Citadel. That's going to be a barn burner.
I didn't have to say anything on that one. That should be, the backups could cover the spread with that one.
Yeah, should be pretty good. It's a no-line game, but with Trinidad Chambliss and Kejuan Lacey, how much do you want to see them play in that football game?
At least a half. If he's smart enough, he'll just play him a half. If you got such a big lead, you got to give Simmons some reps just because the fact that going down the road, if anything happens to Trinidad, the kids got some reps. And I'm not talking spot playing here and there. Play them a whole second half, or that's a smart thing to do. And then you get ready for Florida game. But you gotta be careful, and let Diggs play some. He hasn't really touched a lot of carries, so I think Lane will be smart about it. And at halftime, if they're up 5 scores or whatever it may be, you'll tend to see that he'll play some other guys.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's kind of not. This team is not as good as Washington State, so I'm not saying that, but it's kind of like that Washington State game where everybody is going to be looking ahead to Florida. Everybody wants to get people off the field, so there's a chance for some sloppy play in this game.
Oh, I see that happening. It always happens when you play down to your opponent, I guess you want to call it. They know they can cakewalk this game, fall asleep, and still beat this team, but you don't want to be sloppy playing 60 minutes of football and win, 45-10, and you played very, very, very sloppy against a team that's nowhere near you, because then you're looking at Florida, they'll say, hey, their minds aren't ready for us and blah, blah, blah. Well, then Florida is playing a game too now. They have to play a game. Doesn't mean that they're going to walk into this game and say, hey, we Florida, we should beat this team, but they have got to play good enough, Florida, and go into the Ole Miss game knowing that they got a win under the belt. If they go with another loss against, Ole Miss back-to-back weeks losing to Georgia, I think they say in Kentucky, that's who they play. If they lose that game, you're looking at 2 losses, then you got Ole Miss playing, and they're like, we don't really care. Let's get the season over. Let's get to the beach and, get a little bit of time for ourselves. But I think Ole Miss takes care of business against Citadel, play well enough. I think Lane will emphasize that enough, but play the other guys that you feel like you have to give some rest to, just for the fact you are playing Florida the week after.
All right, John, what do you got planned this week, man?
Well, I'm going to stick around here this week. I'm not doing much, but I want to ask you that sweatshirt, you got to send me where I can pick one up, and I think what you're wearing there is pretty cool looking sweatshirt. Give me the place you got it from, and so I can purchase me one of those. But I'm going to relax here. No big things to do. I know the Saints are they're disappointing right now, so there's not much to do. I'm just got back from Oxford. I had a hoarse voice, and so I'm going to try to catch up the rest of the week and just enjoy it. Watch the game. I probably won't watch the Rebels that much because I'm going to watch some of the other games and hope, got to see where my money's at and, put a little dollars on. I wish they did have a spread on the Citadel game. I'd be interested to see what the spread is and maybe throw something on and see if maybe give Lane a call and say, take care, man. I need to buy some new shoes.
Exactly. Anyway, John, I will tell you exactly where I got this thing as soon as we get done recording. But thank you very much for coming by. And thanks, everybody, for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy breaks down the best conference in all of college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.